Good evening, and welcome to my first Q&A. I've gotten a lot of questions recently, and I decided that rather than commenting, I would make it into a video for 1,000 subs. The next video will be an addition to this Q&A, so look forward to that as well. Anyway, let's get to the questions. Do you recommend any of your videos for beginners? The modes explained in 10 minutes and 13 types of modal borrowing in Japanese video game music teach prerequisite skills that help with my videos. I also recommend watching the Zelda theme and Saga 3 video for an explanation of the functional map. I might make more beginner-focused videos at some point, but keep in mind that you should learn the majority of musical things from contextual analysis of real pieces rather than textbook exercises. I am definitely not a fan of the way college theory classes or even public school music classes operate. In fact, I might have written a manifesto on that at some point. Have you played Nier? What are your thoughts on Keiichi Okabe's music? No, I heard a couple pieces from Nier Automata from one of my friends in college, but I'm not really familiar with Okabe's music. I get very bored with beat-em-up games, so I can't really play them even if I wanted to. Do you compose your own music? And if so, would you be interested in sharing it or commenting on your process in depth? Do I write music? Yes. But a lot of my old music is practice for writing soundtracks, and my new stuff is inspired by my 90-year-old Italian mentor who taught me compositional process. I've been sharing a little bit of his advice thus far, but if you want a raw, condensed version of it, I recommend taking a look at Jameson Nathan Jones's channel, because he already did a pretty good job of explaining Zanninelli's and by extension Menotti's compositional method, despite all of us being interested in completely different styles of music. Will I share my music? Maybe. I used to write a piece almost every week, but I slowly became stuck compositionally because my ears developed faster than my ability to express ideas in a musically coherent manner. According to my mentor, I have the talent to be a composer, but we both know that I need practice with stylistic consistency. In short, someday. I've only written a couple of pieces I think are worth releasing because my standards are higher than most of the musicians I was inspired by at this point. Excuse me if I'm mistaken, but shouldn't the E major and G major 7 be twice as long in the chart? Yes, I needed to make both of those chords 2 measures. Good catch. I'll change that in the version I release on my Ko-Fi. Otherwise, it's a good video. Thank you for making it. It's crazy to think we could spend so long analyzing the chords and modes of a piece when the composer probably wrote it with pure feeling. You see, Hamaazu definitely writes with instinct, but he isn't illiterate. He's a French classical music enthusiast who wrote a lot of concert music as well. He 100% does think through his harmonic language in his commercial music. The fact that you think it feels so natural despite careful crafting is a testament to his ability to write in a way that's both unpredictable and feels inevitable. And this is a quality that I see all throughout Japanese video game music. I hear the Royal Road progression as a 2-5-3-6. Kind of an extended turnaround in this context. It feels like it wants to set up a 2-5-1 afterwards. 2-5-3-6 might seem permissible, but it actually sabotages the cadence because 2 is primarily a cadential harmony, while 4 is more of a strong neutral predominant. The Royal Road progression is specifically not cadential, so it would be unusual to substitute the 4 for 2. You even know that because you said yourself that you do a 2-5-1 afterwards. So if that's the case, then wouldn't the 2 in the Royal Road progression sabotage the 2 in the cadential progression? If a progression sets up a chord, it can't use that chord because that would just give it away. I'm kind of confused listening to you talking about the modes because the chord chart shows 4 chords in that intro, but it really sounds like you're playing at least twice as many chords. I added a double retardation to the 6th chord in the opening progression. This is a common device in Japanese music, but it doesn't affect the Roman numeral, so I just wrote 6. As for the melodic harmonization I'm doing, That's just something you learn to add by listening to this type of music and playing it on your instrument. The intro is really just meant to be 4 chords, but the fact that it sounds so complex and natural is because music is just as much about how you connect chords as the chords themselves. I'm going to play musically because it would not serve you for me to play it sloppily. Could you elaborate a little bit more on this idea that you mentioned around 1831 on another video about the modal identity of each chord? I thought it was very interesting, and like you said, I've hardly ever seen people talk about it. Yes, I plan on explaining isochronously shifting mode in greater detail in future videos, but I'll do a little bit now for your enjoyment. The progressions 4, 2, 1, 6, 5, 2, flat 2, 2, and etc. are all the same type of isochronously shifting mode, sort of, because they go from really dark modes to really bright modes. This is the defining element of the progression, not function. These are progressions like 2, flat 2, and 6, 3, flat 6, flat 7. That sort of thing, for instance, that go from really light to really dark, which is like the opposite. Modal brightness reveals inherent qualities of these progressions that function doesn't account for. Sometimes function can be used in addition to modal analysis, such as what I did in the Road Taken video with the intro. Go watch that video if you missed it. Are there some chords that are used to identify specific modes in certain progressions? And if so, how do they work? Yes, there are. Why do you consider that 1, 4, and flat 6 are the ones that represent Aeolian mode? Wouldn't flat 7 and 2 diminished also work as Aeolian chords? Yes, but not in isochronously shifting mode, because isochronously shifting mode only uses major and minor triads because they are the most contextually ambiguous. If that is confusing, then I don't know. It just kind of works out that way. It's sort of a practice thing more than I can't explain it in a more intuitive way than that's just what composers do. Same thing with 2 and 6 in Ionian mode. I thought 1, 4, and 5 were the ones that established Ionian mode. I'm just really curious. Well, 1, 4, and 5 does represent Ionian mode because they're all major chords that are diatonic to Ionian mode. But 2 is more common than 4 in progressions using isochronously shifting mode because the Japanese think that the minor 2 makes for prettier mode mixture. In my video, 13 Types of Modal Borrowing in Japanese Video Game Music, I call the minor 2 in minor the Japanese 2 chord. I will elaborate on this much more in future videos. Listen to Siberian Katru by Yes off of Close to the Edge. I think this was heavily influenced by that song. The first time I heard it, I thought to myself that it sounded heavily reminiscent of the Chrono Trigger theme. What he's talking about is this section. which definitely sounds like isochronously shifting mode. The thing is that Yes predates Chrono Trigger, so likely Chrono Trigger was inspired by progressive rock, not the other way around. Also, I was wondering if you have any idea how much music theory knowledge Mitsuda had at the time. Did he have extensive music theory knowledge at the time and knew exactly what he was doing, or was he just going with his intuition? Great video, by the way. I was really looking forward to seeing this one, and I'm eagerly awaiting the next one. In my opinion, all musicians who are worth talking about trust their instincts pretty generally. As for music theory, the guy liked listening to classical music, but I don't believe he had any formal training. He likely got musicality from listening to a bunch of pieces and trying to play them on the piano. Then he would find the harmonic patterns by analyzing the context of the harmony. This doesn't really require any theory knowledge, but knowing the theoretical terms can help you communicate patterns with other musicians. You rule. Excited for future videos. Here's my question. Do you think augmented chords always have dominant function like diminished chords? In Japan, yes. But there is the flat 6 augmented chord from my video on the Starship Travels. I explained that as a way to avoid a 164 chord, so I guess that would be sort of an exception if 164 wasn't also dominant in context. I think it's more that B minor is a reasonable key center that's almost breaking slowly into D major, which is a far more overpowering tonal center. Once you hit it, it sort of requires a bit to entrain the listener to get invested in B again. Flat 3 major is just that strong, especially if you resolve to it. Though here it was through a backdoor dominant, which is certainly a more softer sounding resolution. I don't really agree that the relative major is that overpowering. It depends on context, but in this instance, D major is sort of melodically expressed through a double tonic complex. The idea behind a double tonic complex is that the composer expresses little to no distinction between relative keys. It's an innate feature of the rock idiom. Ah yes, slurs in the thumbnail, very classy. I think Z Sugar Ant's comment sums up my thoughts about this, but in the future, I will call upward suspensions mentally challenged. Just want to say I love your vids, and the taste is immaculate. Found you by the Blinded by Light vid, then saw you're also a Toho fan. Love it all, bro. Keep it up. I could be wrong about everything, but I've done this long enough that I don't really take the music is subjective argument very seriously, especially when it comes from people who are driven by guilt and fear what they don't know. Finally, we have the questions from the Discord server. What do you usually find yourself listening to for recreational purposes? My life is studying music, so I get enjoyment from listening to music that surprises me. The more attentive of a listener you become, the more picky you become. This is like a thing that a lot of people get scared of about music theory. They're going to know music theory and then they're going to hate all music. I don't hate all music. I just, every single time they repeat, I notice that they repeated and probably could have done something else. That's the difference. And at this point, I don't really listen to music just to feel good anymore. Although I do listen to music that I talk about on my channel frequently, and they are more exciting to me. Finally, I was curious if you plan on covering any music from the Castlevania series. I really like Successor of Fate from Harmony of Dissonance, but I played that game like last year, and I haven't made a chart for it yet. I may try to get to it eventually. Okay, thanks everyone for your support. This type of video is really fun, especially when I get to be evil and tell people that they're wrong. But I hope you learned something, and if you did, I'm happy. Share my videos with your music friends, and I hope that with this channel, my research will reach a broader audience. I've always struggled to find my place in academia because there's so much insecurity, but the success of my channel reassures me that I'm not alone in this academically lonely business. Well, see you soon for my next video, and good evening.